Lesson 10-2, Lines and Angles. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to identify parallel, perpendicular, and skew lines, classify angles as acute, obtuse, right, or straight, as well as identify midpoints of line segments, congruent segments and angles, perpendicular bisectors, and angle bisectors. Make sure you have a pencil and paper ready so you can work right along with me. Lines that do not intersect may or may not lie in the same plane. They are either parallel or skew. Here we have this sign right here. Two lines like that, that means parallel to. So anytime you see two lines like this, it means parallel to. Here they are again. So we have line AB is parallel to line EF. Right here, we have line AB, and here we have EF. Those are on the same plane. You can see they're right here in this same box right here. They're on that same plane. They're parallel to each other. They're never going to touch. Then we have line AB, which we already have, and then we have line CG right here. Those are on different planes. See the AB is here on this box up front, but CG would be a part of either this one on along the back here or along the side. They're on different planes, but they're called skew lines. And there's no symbol for skew. So on this image here, if I were to give you line DC, I want you to name a line that would be parallel to DC. HG, right. They're on the same plane and they're never going to touch. Now we're going to move on to angles. In the last lesson, I kind of talked about acute and obtuse angles, so we've got those pictured right here, acute and obtuse. So our base measure is this right angle right here. We can look at an angle and know, okay, that's a right angle. Whenever you see this little square in the corner here, that symbol means this is definitely a right angle. And right angles are always 90 degrees. So an acute angle is less than 90 degrees. It's smaller. A lot of times we teachers like to say it's an acute little angle. It's acute. It's little. Littler than 90%. Obtuse is an example here, and those are bigger than 90%. So when you see obtuse, it's bigger than 90 degrees. And then we have a straight angle, just like this. So whenever you see a line, it looks just like a straight line. It's 180 degrees. From this side over to this side, 180 degrees. So make sure you have examples of these written in your notes so that way you have them to refer to later on. If you're given an angle that looks something like this, and you're asked to classify, what kind of angle would that be? I would look at that and say, well, it's bigger than a right angle, and it's not straight. This would be an obtuse angle, and then you can always check that with a protractor. Now this is an example of perpendicular lines. Two lines that are on the same plane and intersect to form right angles. So right here we see those symbols for the right angles. This is perpendicular. When you see the symbol that looks like this, that means perpendicular to. So here we have lines AB, and we have line CD, and we would say they're perpendicular to each other. They intersect here and they form right angles. So those are perpendicular lines. Here are a couple of vocab words to write down. The first one is midpoint. The point that divides the segment into two congruent segments, that would be the midpoint. And then the second is congruent segments. Those are segments that are equal in length. Here we have line segment PQ. Point M, right here, this is the midpoint. It's right in the middle. It's divided it into two congruent segments. So point M would be the midpoint. Now we have segment PM and we have segment MQ. We want to say those are congruent to each other because those are exactly the same. So that would be written as PM, the line segment PM, is congruent to. It's an equal sign with a little squiggle above it. QM. So line segment PM is congruent to line segment QM. And a segment bisector is any line, ray, or segment that intersects a segment at its midpoint. So if we were to have a line go through this, right here at M, that would be a segment bisector. It has gone through straight through that middle part right there. If a segment bisector is also perpendicular to the segment, it's called a perpendicular bisector of the segment. So if it went straight up and down like this, right through the midpoint, and it created perpendicular lines, that would be a perpendicular line segment. Our last section today is on angles, and the angles that are equal in measure are called congruent angles. So just like the line segments that were equal in length, angles that are equal in degrees, those are congruent. So congruent, remember, means equal. So here we have angles EFZ, that is congruent to angle ZFG. These lines right here show that they're congruent. It's saying these two right here are equal. So you would write that as angle EFZ is congruent to angle ZFG. This angle bisector right here, ZF, how it cuts that in the middle right there, that's the angle bisector. That's a ray that divides the angle into two congruent angles. So we would say that the ray FZ, a ray is written like this, a line with just one arrow, is the angle bisector of EFG. So make sure that you rewatch any part of today's video before heading off to do today's math assignment.